The giant room was full of the strangest creatures Jake Morrison had ever seen. Some looked like walking trees with too many arms. Others floated in the air like clouds of light. A few had metal bodies that clicked and whirred when they moved. All of them were much bigger, stronger, or smarter than humans. At least, that's what they thought. Jake sat in the back row with his two friends. Lisa Grant was on his left, playing with her tablet like she was bored. Alex Cooper was on his right, drawing pictures in his notebook. They wore simple blue uniforms that looked plain next to all the fancy armor and glowing robes around them. The 3 humans had been coming to these meetings for 6 months now. Every time, they picked seats in the very back. Every time, the aliens stared at them like they were crazy. "I still don't understand it," said a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. The speaker was Zeth Carr, who looked like a giant lizard wearing a crown. He ruled an empire that covered 50 star systems. Why do the humans always sit back there? Other aliens turned to look. Jake could feel hundreds of eyes on him. Some eyes were red, some were blue, some were colors that humans didn't have names for. All of them looked confused. "Maybe they know their place," said another voice. This one belonged to Fox, who had 4 arms and skin like metal armor. Each of his arms was bigger than Jake's whole body. "They are weak. Sitting in back makes sense for weak things." Jake didn't move. He just kept listening. Lisa looked up from her tablet for a second, then went back to whatever she was doing. Alex kept drawing. The room got quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what the humans would do. Would they get angry? Would they argue? Would they move to the front to prove they belonged? They did none of those things. "Their ships are small," said a creature that looked like a jellyfish made of stars. "We have seen them. Tiny metal boxes that can barely travel between close planets. Their weapons are weak too," added another alien. This one had too many teeth and breath that smelled like sulfur. Chemical explosives and metal bullets. So primitive. "And they have no special powers," said Lumina, who was made of pure light and could read minds. "No telepathy, no energy control, no ability to see the future. They are just ... normal." Jake smiled a little bit. He had heard all this before. Every alien in the galaxy seemed to think the same thing about humans. They were weak, slow, dumb, and had no special abilities. It was funny, because it was almost true. The meeting was supposed to be about trade routes, but nobody was talking about trade anymore. Everyone wanted to know why the humans sat in the back. "Perhaps they are afraid," suggested a robot with glowing red eyes. "Fear would explain their behavior. Or maybe they don't understand how important this council is," said another alien. This one looked like a walking tree with flowers for hands. Jake looked around the room. The front rows were full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. There was Admiral Corvin, whose army had never lost a battle. War Master Zeth Carr sat next to him, the greatest military mind in known space. Behind them were the rulers of 100 worlds, beings who could destroy planets with their thoughts, or build new stars with their technology. And in the very back, 3 humans sat quietly, watching everything. "I have studied their planet," said Dr. Vex, a scientist whose brain was the size of a small moon. "Earth is a death world. Everything there tries to kill everything else. The weather is violent. The animals are dangerous. Even the plants are poisonous. How did such weak creatures survive there?" This made Jake's smile get a little bigger. He remembered his home on Earth, the thunderstorms that could level forests, the hurricanes that could sink ships, the earthquakes that could swallow cities, the animals that hunted in packs or had claws like swords or venom that could kill in seconds. "Luck," said Fox with a laugh that sounded like metal scraping metal. "They got lucky. Now they think they can sit with real powers. Maybe we should ask them to leave," suggested another alien. This council is for important species only. Jake felt Lisa tense up beside him. She didn't like being insulted, but she stayed quiet, just like they had agreed to do. The truth was, humans had been invited to join the Galactic Council. They hadn't asked to come. 3 years ago, alien ships had arrived at Earth. The aliens had been expecting to find a world full of primitive creatures who barely knew how to make fire. Instead, they found humans. Humans who had already been to their moon. Humans who had sent machines to other planets. Humans who had split the atom and built computers and created art that made some aliens cry. Humans who had survived everything there. Deathworld could throw at them and come out stronger. The aliens had been so surprised that they had offered Earth a place in their council. Not because humans were strong or smart or special, but because they were interesting. And interesting things were rare in a galaxy where most species were very similar to each other. But sitting in these meetings, Jake was starting to understand something. The aliens didn't really want humans here. They had invited them because it seemed like the polite thing to do. Now they were looking for reasons to ask them to leave. Their technology is centuries behind ours, said another alien. They still use wheels to move things around. And they fight with each other constantly, added someone else. We have watched their broadcasts. They cannot even agree on what color their sky is. Jake almost laughed at that one. Humans did argue a lot, but they also worked together when it mattered. The aliens didn't understand that yet. I propose we vote, said Zethkar, standing up to his full height of 12 feet. Should the humans remain in this council? All in favor of them staying, raise your appendages. Jake looked around the room. A few aliens raised hands or tentacles or energy fields. Maybe 20 out of 300. All in favor of them leaving? The rest of the room erupted in motion. Arms, claws, wings, and things Jake didn't have names for shot into the air. The message was clear. Humans were not welcome here. Wait, said a voice from the front row. It was Admiral Corvin, the strongest military leader in the galaxy. He was 15 feet tall with muscles like steel cables and armor that could stop laser beams. Before we vote, shouldn't we know why they sit in the back? I am curious. The room got quiet again. All eyes turned to the back row where 3 humans sat calmly. Jake looked at Lisa, then at Alex. They both nodded slightly. It was time to give the galaxy an answer, but not the answer they were expecting. Jake stood up slowly. The movement was so quiet that some aliens didn't notice at first. But as word spread through the giant room, hundreds of conversations stopped. All eyes turned to the back row where a single human had risen from his seat. He wasn't very tall compared to most aliens in the room. He wasn't wearing fancy armor or glowing robes. His uniform was plain blue cloth with simple black boots. He looked like he could be a farmer or a teacher or someone who fixed broken things for a living. You want to know why we sit in the back? Jake said. His voice wasn't loud, but somehow everyone could hear him clearly. The answer is simple. We sit where we can see everything. Murmurs started around the room. Some aliens laughed. Others looked confused. See everything? Repeated Thox, his 4 arms crossing over his metal chest. What is there to see? We are the most powerful beings in the galaxy. There is nothing to learn from us that you're primitive. Minds could understand. Jake didn't look angry or upset. He just nodded like Thox had said something interesting. You're right about one thing. We do have primitive minds. At least, that's what you think. Admiral Corvin leaned forward in his front row seat. The massive alien's armor made grinding sounds as he moved. Speak plainly, human. Why do you sit in the back? Because, Jake said, that's where you put the most dangerous things. The room went completely silent. Even the machines stopped humming. Lisa Grant stood up next to Jake. She was smaller than him, with short brown hair and calm green eyes. She looked like she could be someone's sister or daughter. Nothing about her seemed dangerous at all. On our world, Lisa said in a voice as calm as still water, predators don't announce themselves. They don't wear bright colors or make loud noises. They watch. They wait. They learn. And when the time is right, they act. Dr. Alex Cooper rose from his seat on Jake's other side. He was the youngest of the three, with messy black hair and thick glasses. He looked like he spent his time reading books instead of fighting battles. But we're not predators, Alex said with a small smile. We're something much worse. We're survivors. The aliens in the front rows started to look uncomfortable. Some shifted in their seats. Others whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal or the wind through trees. Admiral Corvin's laugh was like thunder rolling across mountains. Survivors? You think surviving makes you strong? Every species here has survived. We have all conquered death worlds, built empires, mastered the laws of physics. What makes you think you're special? Jake looked at the Admiral for a long moment. How many times has your species almost gone extinct? Never, Corvin replied proudly. The Drakmori have been strong for 50,000 years. How about you, War Master Zethkar? Has your empire ever faced total destruction? Zethkar's lizard-like head tilted to one side. The Vorthik have ruled space for longer than your species has existed. We have never known defeat. Jake nodded and looked around the room. Anyone here ever come close to dying out completely? Anyone ever had to start over from almost nothing? The room stayed quiet. A few aliens looked confused by the question. Humans have, Jake said simply, many times. Ice ages that froze our world solid. Volcanoes that blocked out the sun for years. Diseases that killed 9 out of every 10 people. Asteroids that nearly cracked our planet in half. Wars that turned our cities to ash. And yet, Lisa added, we're still here. Still learning, Alex finished. Admiral Corvin stood up to his full height. His massive form cast shadows over half the room. The crystals in his armor began to glow with stored energy. Pretty words, little humans. But words don't win battles. Strength wins battles. Power conquers worlds. Technology builds empires. You're right, Jake agreed. Power is important. So is technology. So is strength. But there's something more important than all of those. And what is that? Corvin asked, with a voice like grinding stone, knowing when to use them. The Admiral's laugh shook the walls. You speak like warriors, but you look like children. You claim to be dangerous, but you carry no weapons. You say you're survivors, but your entire species could fit on a single moon. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication pad, the kind that millions of beings across the galaxy used every day. This, Jake said, holding up the device, contains the complete military records of every species in this room. Ship designs, weapon capabilities, troop movements, strategic weaknesses. Everything. The room erupted in angry voices. Aliens jumped to their feet. Some began charging energy weapons. Others activated shields or called for their guards. Impossible, snarled Zethkar. Our military secrets are protected by quantum encryption that would take 1,000,000 years to break. Alex pushed his glasses up his nose. It took us 6 weeks. Humans are really good at breaking things that aren't supposed to be broken. You're lying, said Dr. Vex, his massive brain pulsing with angry thoughts. No primitive species could. Crack our security. Lisa tapped her tablet a few times. Suddenly, every screen in the room displayed classified military information. Ship blueprints appeared on the walls. Secret battle plans scrolled across viewing portals. Personal communications between generals and admirals played through the speakers. The aliens stared in shock at their most protected secrets being displayed for everyone to see. "We've been watching you for 6 months," Jake said calmly. "Learning your languages, studying your cultures, understanding your weaknesses. Not because we want to hurt you, but because we want to understand you. This is an act of war," Admiral Corvin roared. His armor's weapon systems began powering up. "No," Jake replied. "This is a demonstration. You wanted to know why we sit in the back. This is why. We sit where we can observe without being observed. We learn without teaching. We prepare without threatening." The Admiral's eyes narrowed to glowing slits. "You think your little computer tricks make you strong? I could crush all 3 of you with one hand." "Probably," Jake agreed. "You're bigger, stronger, and faster than any human. Your technology is better than ours. Your weapons could turn our whole planet to dust." "Then you admit you're weak," Corvin said. "We admit we're different," Lisa replied. "Strength isn't just about size or power. It's about knowing how to win." "Fine," the Admiral said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let's settle this properly. I challenge you to prove your worth. 3 trials: physical combat, technological superiority, and strategic warfare." The room fell silent again. This was serious. Admiral Corvin had never lost a challenge. His physical strength was legendary. His technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. His strategic mind had conquered 17 star systems. "If you win," Corvin continued, "I will personally ensure that humans are treated with the respect you claim to deserve. But if you lose, you will leave this council forever and never return to galactic space." Jake looked at his 2 companions. Lisa shrugged like someone had asked her what she wanted for lunch. Alex cleaned his glasses on his shirt and nodded. "We accept," Jake said. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some aliens began placing bets on how quickly the humans would be defeated. Others started making plans for what to do with Earth after the humans were gone. Admiral Corvin's smile showed teeth like daggers. "Excellent. We begin immediately. The physical trial first." As the room began to transform into a combat arena, Jake remained calm. He had expected this. Humans had been challenged before by predators much more dangerous than Admiral Corvin. The difference was, those predators were extinct now, and humans were still here. The Admiral thought he was about to teach these weak little creatures a lesson about power. But he was about to learn something much more important. He was about to learn why apex predators don't wear bright colors or make loud noises. They just sit quietly in the back and wait for the right moment to show what they're really capable of. The giant room began to change around them. Walls melted and reformed. The floor shifted and grew into hills and valleys. Trees made of hard light sprouted from the ground. Within minutes, the Galactic Council chamber had become a forest battlefield, filled with rocks, streams, and places to hide. Admiral Corvin stood in the center of the arena like a mountain of metal and muscle. His power armor was the most advanced in the galaxy. Energy shields flickered around him like blue fire. Strength enhancers made his already massive muscles twice as big. Weapon systems built into his arms could punch holes through starship hulls. Aliens in the viewing area above were placing bets on how long the fight would last. Most thought it would be over in seconds. 10 credits says the human dies in the first minute, said Thox, his 4 metal arms clanking together. I bet he doesn't even try to fight, laughed Zethkar. He'll probably just run around until Corvin gets bored. Jake Morrison walked into the arena wearing his simple blue uniform and black boots. He carried no weapons except the basic combat knife that looked like a toy compared to Corvin's massive guns. He had no armor except thin cloth that wouldn't stop. A sharp stick, let alone energy beams. The size difference was ridiculous. Corvin was 15 feet tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. Jake was 6 feet tall and weighed about as much as one of Corvin's arms. "This is not fair," said Lumina. "The being made of pure light. The human has no chance at all." "That's the point," replied Dr. Vex, his massive brain pulsing with amusement. "This will teach all the primitive species what happens when they challenge their betters." In the arena, Admiral Corvin activated his armor's speaker system. "Lost. Chance to surrender, little human. I don't want to accidentally kill you." Jake tested the weight of his knife and looked around the forest. "Thanks for the offer, Admiral. But I think I'll see how this goes." "Your funeral," Corvin said. The crystals in his armor began to glow brighter. "Begin!" The Admiral charged, like a freight train made of death and metal. His massive feet cracked the ground with each step. His fists, each one bigger than Jake's head, swung through the air fast enough to break the sound barrier. Jake didn't try to stand his ground. He didn't try to block the punch or dodge to the side. Instead, he dropped flat on his belly and rolled between Corvin's legs. The Admiral's fist hit the spot where Jake had been standing. The impact created a crater 3 feet deep and sent shock. Waves through the arena. "Stand still and fight like a warrior," Corvin roared, spinning around to face Jake. But Jake wasn't there anymore. He had rolled behind a tree and disappeared into the forest. The aliens in the viewing area started booing. "Coward!" shouted one of them. "He's just delaying the inevitable," said another. Admiral Corvin stomped into the trees, his sensors scanning. "For the human, you can't hide forever, little man. My armor can see through walls, detect heat signatures, and track movement from miles away." A small rock bounced off Corvin's helmet. He spun toward where it came from, charging through the trees like a tank. But when he got there, Jake was gone again. Another rock hit him from the opposite direction. Then another from his left side. Then one from above. "Stop playing games," Corvin snarled, firing his arm cannons at every shadow and sound. Energy beams cut through trees and exploded against rocks. The forest began to look like a war zone. But Jake remained invisible, moving through the destruction like a ghost. The Admiral's attacks got wilder and more desperate. He began firing at anything that moved, including shadows and fallen leaves. His energy shields were draining power. His strength enhancers were overheating. His sensors couldn't lock onto a target that never stayed in one place long enough to be detected. "This is embarrassing," muttered Thox from the viewing area. "Corvin is supposed to be the strongest warrior in the galaxy. The human isn't even fighting back," observed Zethkar. "He's just running around like a frightened animal." But some of the smarter aliens were beginning to understand what they were seeing. "Look at the Admiral's armor," said Dr. Vex quietly. "The power levels are dropping. The cooling systems are working overtime. The human isn't running from the fight. He's making Corvin defeat himself." In the arena, Admiral Corvin was beginning to realize the same thing. His massive strength was useless if he couldn't hit his target. His advanced weapons were worthless if they couldn't lock onto an enemy. His heavy armor was becoming a liability, slowing him down and draining his power. "Clever little rat," he growled, stopping his wild attacks and trying to think strategically. "But tricks won't save you forever." A voice came from somewhere in the trees around him. "You're right, Admiral. Tricks won't save me." "But they don't need to." "What do you mean?" Corvin demanded, turning in circles to try to locate the voice. "I mean, you're not fighting me." Jake's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You're fighting yourself, and you're losing." The Admiral looked down at his armor's power readings. Less than 30% remaining. His energy shields were flickering. His strength enhancers were cycling on and off to prevent permanent damage. His cooling systems were barely keeping his weapons from melting. "I don't need full power to crush you," Corvin declared, but his voice sounded less confident than before. "Probably not," Jake agreed from the shadows. "But you need to catch me first." The Admiral made a decision. Instead of chasing sounds and shadows, he would destroy the entire forest. His armor's main cannon began charging up for a blast that would level every tree in the arena. That was when Jake made his move. He dropped from a tree branch directly onto Corvin's back. The Admiral spun and reached over his shoulder, trying to grab the human, but Jake was already moving. He slid down Corvin's arm, ran across his chest, and jumped to the ground. As he passed Corvin's helmet, Jake's knife made a tiny cut in one of the armor's cooling tubes. It was such a small cut that most people wouldn't even notice it. But coolant began to leak out drop by drop. Corvin fired his main cannon, turning a section of forest into burning ash. But Jake was no longer there. He was behind the Admiral again, making another tiny cut, this time in a power cable. "Stand still and fight," Corvin roared, spinning around and swinging his massive fists. Jake ducked under the punches and made two more small cuts, one in a sensor wire and another in a joint seal. To the aliens watching from above, it looked like Jake was just barely avoiding being killed. They saw him dodge and weave and run for his life, while the Admiral's massive fists came within inches of crushing him. But Dr. Vex was beginning to understand what was really happening. "He's not trying to hurt Corvin," the scientist said with growing amazement. "He's performing surgery." Each time Jake got close to the Admiral, his knife found another critical spot. A sensor here, a cooling line there, a power connection, a joint actuator. None of the cuts were big enough to shut down the armor completely, but together they were like 1,000 bee stings bringing down a giant. The Admiral's movements began to slow as his power systems failed. His punches became clumsy as his strength. Enhancers died. His aim got worse as his targeting computers went offline. "What have you done to me?" Corvin demanded, stumbling as his armor's balance systems failed. Jake stepped out of the shadows, no longer bothering to hide. The Admiral tried to grab him, but his arm moved too slowly. Jake simply stepped aside. "I didn't do anything to you, Admiral," Jake said calmly. "I just showed your armor's weak points to themselves." Corvin tried to fire his weapons, but they were offline. He tried to charge, but his legs wouldn't support his weight anymore. The most advanced suit of armor in the galaxy had become a 15-foot-tall prison. The Admiral fell to his knees, then onto his side, completely helpless. Jake walked over and gently placed his small combat knife against Corvin's throat, right where the armor's neck seal had failed. "Yield," Jake said quietly. The arena fell completely silent. The most powerful warrior in the galaxy had been defeated by a human with a knife. "I yield," Admiral Corvin whispered. The viewing area exploded in shocked voices. Aliens who had bet against the human were demanding their money back. Others were claiming the fight had been rigged, but the smart ones were beginning to understand something important. "He never tried to overpower the Admiral," Dr. Vex said in wonder. "He studied the armor, found its weaknesses, and used Corvin's own strength against him." "The human won without throwing a single punch," added Lumina, her light flickering with amazement. In the arena, Jake helped Admiral Corvin sit up while technicians worked to restore his armor's basic functions. "How?" the Admiral asked. "How did you know where to cut?" Jake smiled. "We've been watching you for 6 months, remember? Every time you moved, every time you fought, every time you showed off your armor, we learned how it works. More importantly, we learned how it breaks." Corvin stared at the small human who had defeated him. "You could have killed me." "Yes," Jake agreed. "But that wasn't the point. The point was to show you that strength isn't just about size or power. It's about knowing how to use what you have. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, again his voice was filled with something it had never held before. Respect. The physical trial is yours, human. But there are still 2 more challenges. Jake nodded and looked up at the viewing area, where hundreds of aliens sat in stunned silence. 1. Trial down. 2 to go, and the galaxy was. The arena faded away as the room returned to its normal shape. Admiral Corvin was helped to a medical station where robot doctors worked to repair his damaged armor. The massive alien kept staring at Jake like he was seeing a ghost. The other aliens in the viewing area were talking in hushed voices. Some seemed angry that their champion had lost. Others looked worried. A few appeared fascinated by what they had just witnessed. The physical trial was just luck, declared Thox, his 4 metal arms clicking together nervously. Any fool can find weak spots if they look hard enough. Yes, agreed Zethkar, though his voice sounded less confident than before. The technological trial will be different. The human cannot trick his way through superior science. Dr. Vex stepped forward from the crowd. His massive brain was the size of a small room, kept alive in a tank of glowing fluid. Wires and tubes connected him to computers that could process information faster than entire planets. I will handle the second trial personally, Dr. Vex announced. The cybernetic collective has never been defeated in matters of technology. The room's floor began to change again. This time, instead of trees and rocks, machines rose from the ground. Computer terminals appeared along the walls. Screens flickered to life, showing complex equations and diagrams that hurt to look at. In the center of it all sat a device that made every alien in the room nervous. It was called the Quantum Paradox Engine, and it had been the greatest mystery in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The engine looked like a metal sphere covered in lights, wires, and strange symbols. It hummed with power that seemed to bend space around it. Every few seconds, it would flicker and seem to exist in 2 places at once. This device, Dr. Vex explained, his artificial voice echoing through the room, contains the secrets of quantum reality itself. It can manipulate time, space, matter, and energy. It could provide unlimited power to entire star systems, or create weapons that could destroy galaxies. The aliens nodded respectfully. They all knew about the engine. Every major civilization had tried to unlock its secrets. All had failed. The problem, Dr. Vex continued, is that no one has been able to activate it. The greatest minds in galactic history have studied this device. Computers more powerful than solar systems have analyzed every component. Nothing works. Alex Cooper stepped forward from the back row. He looked even smaller next to the massive machines surrounding the engine. His thick glasses reflected the lights from a dozen computer screens. So the challenge is to turn it on? Alex asked, pushing his glasses up his nose. The challenge, Dr. Vex replied, is to succeed where everyone else has failed. You have 1 hour to accomplish what 1,000 years of research could not. Alex nodded and walked over to one of the computer terminals. The screen was covered with symbols and numbers that would take most beings years to understand. Alex stared at it for about 10 seconds, then started typing. Dr. Vex connected himself to his most powerful computer systems. Millions of calculations began running simultaneously. Data from every previous attempt to understand the engine flowed through his artificial mind. The other aliens watched with interest. This would surely be where the humans failed. Physical combat was one thing, but technology was different. It required intelligence, knowledge, and computational power the humans simply didn't possess. The human doesn't even know what he's looking at, laughed one of the aliens. Those symbols are in a language that died out 50,000 years ago. Even if he could read them, added another, the mathematics involved would take centuries to understand. Alex ignored them and kept typing. Instead of trying to decode the ancient symbols, he opened a simple drawing program and began making sketches on his screen. Dr. Vex noticed this and paused his calculations. "What are you doing, human? This is not the time for art projects." "Just thinking," Alex replied, continuing to draw. His sketches looked like simple stick figures and basic shapes. Nothing that seemed related to advanced quantum physics. The massive artificial brain resumed his work with something that might have been contempt. While the human played with pictures, Dr. Vex was running simulations that modeled every possible combination of the engine's components. 20 minutes passed. Dr. Vex had eliminated half of all possible solutions and was working through the rest at incredible speed. His calculations were so complex that they required their own dedicated star system to provide enough computational power. Alex was still drawing. He had filled several screens with simple diagrams that looked like they belonged in a children's book rather than an advanced physics laboratory. "This is embarrassing," muttered Thox. "The human isn't even trying." "Maybe he's given up," suggested Zethkar. "He knows he can't compete with real intelligence." But some of the other aliens were starting to pay attention to Alex's drawings. They were simple, but there was something about them that seemed familiar. 40 minutes in, Dr. Vex announced his progress. "I have eliminated 90% of all possible solutions. The remaining calculations will be complete within 15 minutes. Alex looked up from his drawings for the first time since the challenge began. "Dr. Vex, can I ask you a question?" The artificial brain paused. "What? Who built the engine?" "Unknown," Dr. Vex replied. "The civilization that created it disappeared long before any current species achieved space travel. But they were biological, right? Living creatures like most of us?" "Obviously. Only biological intelligence could have created something so elegant." Alex nodded and went back to his drawings. He was sketching what looked like a family of stick figures holding hands around a circle. With 10 minutes left, Dr. Vex's calculations were nearing completion. The massive computer systems connected to his brain were running so hot that they required their own cooling planets. "I have the solution," Dr. Vex announced triumphantly. "The engine requires a specific sequence of quantum fluctuations applied to 17 different access points simultaneously." He began inputting the commands, his mechanical arms moving faster than most eyes could follow. Lights flashed on the engine. Power readings spiked. Energy fields formed around the device. For a moment, it looked like it might work. The engine's lights grew brighter. The humming got louder. Space itself seemed to bend around it. Then everything stopped. The lights dimmed. The humming faded. The engine returned to its normal, inactive state. "Impossible," Dr. Vex said, running his calculations again. The mathematics were perfect. The timing was exact. It should have worked. "Maybe you're thinking about it wrong," Alex suggested quietly. "What do you mean?" Alex stood up and walked over to the engine. He didn't touch any of the controls or try to input any commands. He just stared at the device for a long moment. "You said the beings who built this were biological, right? Living creatures with emotions and families and dreams?" "Yes, but what does that have to do with anything?" "Everything," Alex said. He reached out and placed his hand flat against the engine's surface. "This isn't just a machine. It's a work of art." The engine immediately began to glow, not with the harsh light of technology, but with something softer and warmer. The symbols on its surface rearranged themselves into patterns that seemed almost like writing. "What did you do?" Dr. Vex demanded. "I stopped trying to solve it like a puzzle," Alex explained, and started trying to understand it like a person. The engine's glow grew brighter. Energy fields formed around it, but these were different from before. Instead of the chaotic quantum fluctuations that Dr. Vex had tried to create, These fields moved in patterns that seemed almost like music. "Look at your drawings," said Lumina, her light flickering with amazement. "The stick figures holding hands. That's the pattern the engine is making." Alex smiled. The beings who built this didn't just want it to work. They wanted it to mean something. They built their values into it: family, cooperation, unity. The engine won't activate for someone who only sees it as a machine to be solved. The device was now glowing so brightly that some aliens had to shield their eyes. The quantum fields. Around it were stable and beautiful, flowing in patterns that reminded everyone of dancing or singing or children playing together. "But how did you know?" Dr. Vex asked, his massive brain struggling to understand what had happened. Alex walked back to his computer terminal and pointed at his simple drawings. "I spent the first 20 minutes studying the engine's design. Not the technology, but the art. Look at the way the components are arranged. The curves in the metal, the spacing between the lights. It's not random. It follows the same patterns that biological beings use when they create things that matter to them." He clicked through his drawings, showing how each simple sketch matched a part of the engine's design. The central core is surrounded by smaller components, like a parent surrounded by children. The energy conduits flow in spirals that match the growth patterns of living things. The control systems are grouped in clusters that look like communities. Dr. Vex processed this information at incredible speed. "You're saying the engine's creators built emotional logic into a quantum device?" "I'm saying they built human logic into it," Alex replied. "Well, not human exactly, but biological logic. The kind of thinking that comes from having families and friends and caring about more than just efficiency." The engine pulsed with warm light, as if agreeing with him. "This is impossible." The room transformed one final time. Instead of forests or laboratories, it became something that looked like the bridge of a massive warship. Screens covered every wall, showing star maps, fleet positions, and tactical data. The air hummed with the energy of 1,000 computer systems running battle simulations. War Master Zethkar stood in the center of it all, like a general preparing for the most important battle of his life. His lizard-like head turned slowly as he studied the displays. Around him, every movement was careful and calculated, like a predator choosing the perfect moment to strike. "This," he announced in a voice like grinding stone, "is the Strategic Command Center. Here we will fight the greatest space battle in galactic history. Not with real ships, but with perfect simulations that test every aspect of military thinking." The aliens in the viewing area leaned forward with interest. This was what they had been waiting for. Physical combat could be won with luck. Technology trials could be solved with strange insights. But strategy was pure intellect, and no primitive. Species could match the greatest military mind in the galaxy. "Each of us will command a fleet of 1,000 ships," Zethkar continued. "Battleships, cruisers, fighters, support vessels, every class of starship that exists in known space." Lisa Grant stepped forward to face the War Master. She looked even smaller than usual next to the massive alien, like a child preparing to play chess with a grandmaster. "The simulation will be completely fair," Zethkar said, though his smile suggested he thought fairness wouldn't matter. "Equal forces, equal starting positions, equal access to tactical data. Victory will go to the superior strategic mind." Lisa nodded and walked over to her command station. The interface was designed for beings much larger than humans, so she had to stretch to reach some of the controls. But she didn't complain or ask for adjustments. "You may have 1 hour to study the tactical situation before we begin," Zethkar offered generously. "That's okay," Lisa replied, already starting to input commands. "I'm ready now." The War Master's eyes widened slightly. "You don't want to analyze the fleet compositions? Study the battlefield? Plan your strategy?" I've been planning this strategy for 6 months, Lisa said with a small smile. The simulation began. Both fleets appeared on the main screen, floating in space near a contested star system. Zethkar's ships formed perfect battle lines, each vessel in exactly the right position for maximum firepower and protection. It was beautiful to watch, like a deadly ballet performed by masters of their craft. Lisa's fleet looked like chaos by comparison. Her ships were scattered across space, with no apparent pattern. Some were grouped together, others flew alone. There seemed to be no coordination, no grand plan, no tactical brilliance. The human has no idea what she's doing, laughed Fox from the viewing area. Look at that mess, agreed another alien. Zethkar will destroy her in minutes. But Jake and Alex, watching from the back row, were both smiling. War Master Zethkar began his attack with textbook precision. His battle groups moved in coordinated formations, concentrating firepower on Lisa's scattered vessels. His tactics were flawless, his timing perfect, his execution magnificent. Lisa's ships seemed to panic. They broke formation even more, fleeing in all directions. Some groups fought desperately, while others appeared to run away. It looked like a complete disaster. "This is embarrassing," muttered Dr. Vex. "The human is being destroyed." But Admiral Corvin, still recovering from his own defeat, was watching more carefully. "Wait," he said slowly. "Look at the casualties." The tactical display showed ship losses for both sides. Despite the apparent chaos of Lisa's fleet, Zethkar perfect formations were taking more damage than they should have been. "How is that possible?" wondered Lumina. "The War Master's tactics are flawless." "They are," agreed Corvin. "That's the problem." 20 minutes into the battle, the pattern became clearer. Every time Zethkar's forces concentrated on one group of Lisa's ships, 3 other groups would appear behind them. When his formations turned to deal with a new threat, the original group would counterattack. "She's not running away," Dr. Vex realized. "She's hurting him." Lisa's seemingly random ship movements weren't chaotic at all. They were bait, drawing Zethkar's perfect formations into positions where they could be surrounded and overwhelmed. "Impossible," snarled the War Master, studying his tactical displays. "Her ships have no coordination, no central command structure. How can they be so effective?" The answer was becoming clear to those aliens smart enough to see it. Lisa wasn't commanding her fleet like a traditional military force. She was commanding it like a living organism. "Each ship group is making its own decisions," observed Admiral Corvin with growing amazement. "But they're all working toward the same goal. Like a school of fish avoiding a shark," added Lumina. "Or a pack of wolves hunting a bear," suggested Dr. Vexdot in the command center. Zethkar was becoming frustrated. His perfect strategies kept meeting unexpected resistance. Every time he tried to use his superior firepower, Lisa's ships would scatter and regroup somewhere else. When he spread his forces to cover more area, concentrated attacks would punch through his lines. "Stand still and fight," the War Master growled, his claws clicking against his control panel. "Why?" Lisa asked calmly, not looking up from her displays. "You're bigger and stronger than me. Standing still would be stupid." She was right, and Zethkar knew it. In a fair fight between equal forces, his superior experience and tactical knowledge should have guaranteed victory. But Lisa wasn't giving him a fair fight. She was giving him the fight that favored her strengths instead of his. 40 minutes in, the War Master's fleet was scattered across the battlefield, chasing shadows and fighting enemies that vanished whenever he tried to pin them down. His perfect formations had been broken up into smaller groups that could be defeated one at a time. "How?" Zethkar demanded. "How are you coordinating attacks without a command structure?" Lisa finally looked up from her controls. "Who says I don't have a command structure?" It's just not the kind you're used to. She gestured at her displays, which showed ship groups communicating with each other directly, instead of routing everything through a central headquarters. My ships talk to each other, Lisa explained. They share information, make decisions together, adapt to changing situations. Your ships follow orders from the top down. Mine work together from the bottom up. That's impossible, Sethkar protested. Military forces require hierarchy, discipline, chain of command. Human military forces do, Lisa agreed. When they're fighting other humans. But we're not fighting other humans. We're fighting aliens who think in straight lines. The War Master's confusion was shared by most of the aliens in the viewing area. The idea of a military force without strict hierarchy was completely foreign to them. How do you maintain discipline? Asked Admiral Corvin. We don't, Lisa replied. We maintain trust. With 10 minutes left in the simulation, Zethkar's fleet was in full retreat. His remaining ships were trying to regroup, but Lisa's forces kept appearing wherever he least expected them. I don't understand, the War Master said, his voice filled with genuine confusion. Your tactics make no sense. Your strategy violates every principle of warfare. Every principle of alien warfare, Lisa corrected. Human warfare is different. We learned to fight on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Individual strength didn't matter. Technology didn't matter. What mattered was working together, adapting quickly, and never giving up. The simulation ended with Zethkar's flagship surrounded by Lisa's remaining vessels. The galaxy's greatest military strategist had been completely outmaneuvered by a human who had never commanded anything larger than a patrol ship. I surrender, Zethkar said quietly. The viewing area fell silent. In the space of 3 trials, humans had defeated the galaxy's strongest physical warrior, greatest technological mind, and most brilliant military strategist. Admiral Corvin was the first to speak. I understand now why you sit in the back. Jake Morrison stood up in the rear row, his calm voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. We don't sit in the back because we're weak or afraid or unworthy. We sit in the back because that's where you put the things you're not ready to understand. Lisa joined him, still calm despite her incredible victory. We watch, we learn, we adapt. And when someone challenges us, we respond not with superior strength or technology, but with something much more dangerous. Alex stood as well, cleaning his glasses one more time. We respond with understanding. We see your strengths and work around them. We find your weaknesses and use them against you. We turn your own power into our advantage. But most importantly, Jake continued, we remember that the point of strength isn't to dominate others. It's to protect what matters to you. Admiral Corvin rose slowly from his medical station. What matters to humans? Jake looked around the room at hundreds of alien faces, many of them showing expressions he had never seen before. Respect, wonder, and perhaps for the first time, real understanding. Each other, he said simply. Humans protect each other. We fight for each other. We die for each other. And when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. That's why we're dangerous, Lisa added. Not because we're strong or smart or advanced, but because we care about something more than ourselves. War Master Z.